Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again. I've done several ambassadors in my library, but it always seems like somebody's looking for one more, and in this case, this is a classic. This is the Abu Sweden. It's the Ambassador 5500. It's one of the older ones, and we're going to show you how to take this apart, how to service it, and how to get it out there fishing again. There's a little bit of it needs service kind of a feel to it. But otherwise, it's working. The line guide and everything is going well. I feel a little bit of a hitch as we go around. So we'll take this apart. It's going to be the older design on the inside. We'll show you how to service this thing. And I start by removing the exterior pieces. And while I do that, I want to reach out to all of the first responders, essential personnel, government employees, or EMTs, or fire, or medical, including nurses and doctors and staffing of all of the medical facilities that are helping us to deal with COVID. Without you, it would be impossible to prevent and fight this deadly disease, and we thank you for all of your efforts in doing that. Really appreciate it. All right, we're going to take the C-clip, or the E-clip, off of the post here after we remove that 10mm nut. And be careful with this one. It's just a little E-clip, but it does have a tendency to fly. And if it starts to fly, you're going to be spending some time looking for that one because that's a difficult clip to replace. So while we do this, let's just cover some of the basics as well. I do wear a latex glove on my hand. That protects me from the greases and things that are inside, as well as solvents and the like that I might use to clean them. I also use a parts tray. It's off camera, now it's in the camera, but it's nothing more than the bottom, in this case, of a fast food container, and that way I know where to go to get the pieces. You're going to notice that this handle is bowed. I'm going to deal with that in a little bit, but believe it or not, the answer is to just take a soft blow hammer and kind of whack it in the middle like that, and all of a sudden it's straight. So kind of an interesting little tool. We won't do that again because that just hurt my hearing, but that's how you fix a bowed handle. You just kind of do what was opposite of what it was, find out where the bow is, put it onto a strong piece of board or metal, center it, and just give it one quick whack, and that one's back in business. I did notice that this one was kind of crying while I was doing this, kind of noisy, so I'm going to just take a penetrating oil right over the posts. I'm going to let that kind of seep in, do its stuff as I continue the service here. If you use a soft blow hammer on the metal, you're not going to dent it, and your hammer is softer than the metal, so it's going to transfer that energy to the metal rather than have that metal absorb it. Okay, there's a little tension clip that goes between the handle and the star drag. Next step then would be to remove the star drag. You do that in a counterclockwise fashion. And then we're ready to take off the side case. So the side case is connected by 3 screws. When you do this, these are thumb screws. All you have to do is kind of break them from that initial turn. And then you can remove them with your thumb and index finger. And I prefer to do it that way rather than to try and work it all the way back out with the screwdriver. And then we can remove this completely by pulling back on it, on the assembly. And noticing we're short one break here. And I don't know if that was contributing at all to what's going on, but we're definitely short one break. And we can remove this now. And we can remove this if the line doesn't get trapped with the spool. And we got line trapped here. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to note, I'll come back to the spool in a moment. We'll come over here and take these screws out and deal with that trap. But one of the things that's interesting to note is when you're servicing your reel, get rid of the the line from the previous season. I recommend that you service your reels once a year at a minimum, either at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season. I kind of like to do it at the end of the season. That way, if the fish that you're fishing for, let's say striped bass or something, if that run gets hot, you don't have to sit there and worry that you didn't have your reel ready to go. So we can take that off, pull it all out this way, and pull this out. So we have a little kind of accumulation of stuff, if you will, on here. I don't know what got trapped in there, but something got trapped in there. I'm using steel wool to take that off. And speaking of taking off, I'm going to take off a couple of yards of this line here because that was impeding the ability to get anything done there. I wanted to take that snap ring off to get to this bearing. You don't have to do it this way, or bushing rather, it's not a bearing. You don't have to do that, but I prefer to do that while I'm servicing this. I want to make sure that it's all okay. If there's any dirt and stuff, just kind of clean it up. You can see that there's a lot of dirt on that wheel there. I'm simply going to go ahead and put that back in then. There's a little notch for this bearing, or bushing. Find the notch. And 3 and 2 and 1. So you want to reseat this bushing. You want to take that little snap ring and put that back in. Again, I use a snap ring pliers for this. You can see it better now versus when I was working internally. And then you just want to compress that and get that into the slots. This is not a very hard snap ring, or one filled with a lot of tension. So if you don't have the snap ring pliers, generally you can do that one by hand with a little bit of pressure from both side points. I'm going to use a metal cleaner here just to clean up the case. There's some old stuff on there, and while I have everything off and about, you can go ahead and do that. I'm using a kitchen scrubby with a chrome polish. We'll just take care of that while we're at it. There's a lot of various polishes out there that are good. I've used Flitz recently, which is a good polish. I've used Pen Rod and Reel Cleaner, which is a good polish. And I've always had success with this Turtle Wax Chrome polish, so that's what I'm using today. I'm going to also clean the dirt off of the idler gear while I'm at it. Now, many of you may notice this is dry, and that's okay. You have a Teflon or a plastic wheel, which is a petrochemical product. Same thing on this side with the drives, so you don't need to grease those. And sometimes grease will actually just get in the way. And we'll just come over here and make sure that the worm gear is working. Now that one is metal. I'm going to put a shot of oil on that before I come back and just put the side case back on. That'll just fit on like that. And it's always good to test this right about now. Just kind of move the line guide here by turning the idler gear inside, making sure that it moves. You wouldn't want to go ahead and do the whole reassembly again and find out it's not. And also I'm just noticing I got some dirt on the inner case here, so I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can't get some of that up too while we're at it. We haven't even got to the gear, which is what really you want to spend your time doing. All right, I'm going to grab those 3 side plate screws and finish this up before I go any further, just because the more pieces you can put back onto your reel, the less pieces you have to lose as you're working on them. So work in sections on a reel while you're working on these. Don't jump all over the place. It will only make it more difficult to keep order of it and to make sure that you get everything going back in the right place when it's time. Now, one of the things that I like to do to keep order of it is take pictures. I recommend everybody takes pictures. Now, of course, I'm taking pictures by doing the video here, but if you use a cell phone camera, if you use a regular digital camera, it doesn't have to be a video. I mean, if you want to video yourself, that's fine. But if you just want to take pictures at critical junctures and know the orientations of pieces and parts and things like that, well, that's okay too. All right, I'm just going to clean the back of this. I'm using a light steel wool here because this looks like some pretty much dried sea, whatever that would be, whether it's a river or a lake or the ocean or whatever. It just has got to build up here, so let's get rid of that while I'm doing this. We'll put the cap back on this side. And I'm even going to put the spool back in at this point. Just and sailing over the crests. Looking for your brake. And 3 and 2 and 1. So I went to my cabinet there. If you notice that there's a little stutter in this video, I went to my camera, got a second brake, and we're going to go ahead and put the spool in right now. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease onto the tip here, which was kind of a little bit sticky on that side, and maybe that's what I was feeling in the performance, or perhaps it was that. And we're going to load that into the bushing. And this always is the case. This is another reason why I suggest that you take the line off the spool, because it seems like whenever you go to put a spool back in, the darn line comes through the case and gets trapped. Just be aware of that if you're having trouble getting a spool back in. That would be a cause. Alright, we're just going to do a little bit cleanup on this side. It's got the corresponding dirt from the case. And I still have that line coming through. Let's put the one original back on and put the one that I got out of my parts box. And we got I'm going to do a little video here, not immediately, but there's a little trick here with those brakes. If you lose them, and if you have no place else to turn, then here's a fun little thing. These red hoses from your spray cans, if you clip them at about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, you can make a replacement brake. You don't need brakes. People have asked about what's the function of that brake. It slows the spool down. It's an anti-backlash feature. And actually, a lot of people that like to do long casting and the like, we need those brakes because they want the spool to spin as fast as it can. All right, this side's done. Let's turn our attention then to the gear side. There's 2 screws that hold this whole thing on. The 3 other screws that you're seeing, remember, were the thumb screws that came out of the frame posts. And they're actually nuts, they're not screws, but that's okay. So here's your second screw. That'll give us the inside assembly here. We're going to just pull straight up on this. That'll release it. And this is the older assembly. It's got a lot of dirt on it, so we'll show you how to clean all of that up. This older assembly can be identified by the double trip levers for your free spool release, and you can also see the yoke here is spring driven up top and holds our pinion gear in place. So let's go ahead and remove the main assembly here, and you can, if you like, take all of this stuff off. I find that generally that doesn't need to be done, but what I do like to do is take a penetrating oil, and I should be able to accomplish most of the cleaning just by soaking this plate with penetrating oil, grabbing a cotton swab, and just getting in underneath all of this to get the old grease and dirt off of there. Now if you needed to take this plate off, easy enough, you just remove the 4 springs here, the 3 springs here. That'll enable you to pull up on all of the pieces and parts and to work at that. But these cotton swabs, along with pushing down on this to change the grab points for those dogs, is perfectly fine for what we're doing here. I'm going to switch over because that one's absorbed an awful lot there. Use a paper towel, get that grease and grime all off of there. And as I mentioned, this is a double trip mechanism below here that you're seeing. What it does is it pushes one click first, then the other. It's being driven off the back here by these 2 studs on the click rotor. And this is your anti-reverse dog. It's a, take it off, it's easier. It's a finger joint kind of a thing. You have a piece of cotton copper wing on both sides that rides one side to each on this click rotor. And what I'll do is I'll take all of this off to show you. Probably should see it anyway because a lot of folks will take this piece off and will look for a YouTube video saying how do I put it back together. So let's do that. So this is your click rotor. Just finish the cleaning. 2 studs on the back. They ride on a copper shim below, and we're going to just go ahead and put that back on right now. We're going to make sure we get grease onto the shaft. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And now I actually have this set down, so you'll actually see a trip now. I'm going to hold that. It'll push the one, and it'll push the other, and that'll push it up. Okay, that's your lesson in the old style mechanics here. I have the pinion gear, which I'm not going to remove, but I am going to grease. You can work that pinion gear out of there without removing the yoke if you need to, but this one's clean, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick it up at that point. Now we have the, when we put the quick rotor in without the dog, so let's go ahead and do that again. I was more interested in showing you how the free spool clicked back. So we've just loaded it 1 tooth to each side. When you put that back on, you need to center your anti-reverse dog over the stud on the right hand side of this faceplate and push everything down. And now you'll see I'm going to hold my finger here because it'll just shoot off if I don't. But as you're spinning the reel, it releases. Well, I got it out too far, didn't I? There we go. So your case is going to hold it like this. It'll release the spinning, and as you go to back it up, those fingers are going to grab and pull that tooth into the side there. All right, we got a little bit of dirt. We're going to take our washer that seats next over the piece there. I'm going to use a paper towel if I can to get the old grease off. I don't like to go any more abrasive than I need to. And this second part here appears to be more of a staining than it is a dirt. So we'll just get that off. That's the washer positioning. Let's go ahead and get the inner piece off here. I'm going to clean the inside of this as well. Once it's nice and clean, check all the teeth on this. Make sure that they're uniform and not jammed. And from what I felt on this one, it's a matter that it was dry in performance. So we're going to go ahead and put the grease onto the gearing. So we've already greased the pinion gear, now we're greasing the main gear. And we can set that over the side here. Make sure you mesh with that pinion gear there. Now we have the leather washer. I'm just removing that. That's the drag washer. Kind of peeling it off, so it's been compressed enough that it's stuck to the rim. So you want to be careful. You can reuse these. I just want to make sure that we get the residue off of here. That way the drag will be much more efficient. So I'm going to just use my steel wool again here to take off the old residue. Make sure that it's nice and smooth. And then I'm going to, since this is leather, I'm going to use a drag washer grease on it. I'm going to use Cal's Universal Drag Grease. That will keep this nice and flexible. And it'll also provide some slide for that pressure plate there. Once I do that, I can seat this back into the main gear. I just put a light coating on there. If you put too much on, it's only going to squeeze out. All right, we got that in. We've got this nice and cleaned. I'm just feeling for any irregularities, and that's fine at the moment. So that goes on next. Then we had the tension washers for the drag adjuster. They're concave, and you can put them in any sequence you like. The more you put in the if you nest them, you'll have less, and if you put them face to face, you'll have more give in the drag adjuster, the star adjuster. Okay, and we put our little rubber on. We have one more set here with this dirt. So let's go back to that pad then, that scrubby pad that we had. Just take care of that. And I'll be able to put this back on, give it a test, get it out there fishing again. So if you're enjoying these videos, I ask that you like them. If you can subscribe, I would appreciate that. It helps my channel. And thank you all 10,000 plus of you now. We just went over the 10,000 mark in a little bit, about 2 years of doing this. And if you do subscribe, hit the notification button, because that way you won't miss any of the videos that I do. And I do all kinds of reels. I do the spinning, I do the bait casting, I do the large saltwater reels. I basically have done videos on almost everything. I don't turn any down basically, but what I do is I do the ones that come into my shop. So if I'm predominantly in a saltwater neighborhood, if you will, with the ocean nearby, so I do see a lot of saltwater reels come in, but that doesn't mean that I'm getting predominantly or only doing saltwater. And a lot of folks ask if I do repair reels by mail, and I do. That's where this one came from. And of course, across this beautiful country of ours, we got all kinds of fishing, and I get all kinds of reels by mail. So don't typecast this as just being one type of channel. It certainly is reel repair, but it's all kinds of reels that are repaired. The one I would say that I don't get much of is the closed-faced bait casters, and that's because those reels are largely viewed as disposable. There's just, by the time you mail something and you invest in the cost of the repair and everything, you can probably buy a new one. Not probably, you could. So that's why I don't see those. Alright, we're back to putting that adjuster on. Just cleaning it up off the chrome. Be careful, do this by slowly turning it because you don't want to cross strip this piece. So find the grooves, and if you find you're going in on an angle, just work it until it's done right. And I apologize if you're not seeing this well on the camera. Let's see if we can just change this approach to make it a little bit better. There you go. But do it by hand. Spin it as much as you can. Alright, then we had the little tension washer. So that's got a little grease and grime on it as well. That tension washer goes over the post. Then our handle goes on, our nice straight handle now. Got a little bit of a straightening by way of a dead blow hammer. Now our E-clip goes back on. Sometimes this E-clip can go on by just finger strength, sometimes it can't. Of course, I guess it also depends on how strong your fingers are, but I generally use an assist from a needle nose pliers. And that's your E-clip is on now. And you can put the 10mm nut back on. And when you do this, generally speaking, if you get to the flat spot of that handle nut, you should be able to align the tie-down hole. Actually, it's backed off just a little bit. There we go. So that you can insert the tie-down screw, which is the last piece in my tray. So it looks like I've done what I should do in terms of taking them off and putting them back together. Now we have the brakes that I reinstalled. We want to take the grease brush and just get a little bit onto the axle shaft. And we can go ahead and seat the side plate. Again, these are nuts, not screws here. And then the only thing left then is to put a little bit of oil onto the pawl. Okay, so just finished tightening up that cap, and now it's time for a test drive. So let's go over what we've done first. We've removed the spool, we removed the side plate, we took care of cleaning everything inside the non-handle side case, including a little bit of oil onto the worm gear. We cleaned up the spool shaft, which was a little bit sticking in the adjuster over here. And we removed the handle side cover. We took care of cleaning everything in the assembly. I used some penetrating oil for that with some cotton swabs. Then we took off the main gear assembly. We found that the drag washer was a little bit stuck, so we cleaned all of that up, and we re-lubed it with some drag grease. And we greased all of the main internal parts, including the main gear and the pinion gear. Drags were serviced, and now it's just ready for a test drive. So here we go. Well, we got a nice smooth. We're taking all of the noise out of this reel, that's for sure. Let's make sure that we have the free spool in place. We do. We've straightened the handle, which is great because now you have an adjuster that's going to work. Let's trip the handle, make sure, yep, we're back there. Let's make sure that that drag is sticking. It certainly is. Now I recommend that you back the drag off if you're not using it. That way it won't compress into the main gear like the condition that we found. So I'm going to leave this one off, and it'll just need to be retightened when it's out to go fishing. That's it. So there you go. That's the older model of the Ambassadeur 5500, made in Sweden, and has the old style internal design. And if you have one of these, you now know how to tune it up. If you're thinking of purchasing one, you now know what this one is made of. So I appreciate you watching. If you can, please subscribe. If you subscribe, please use the notifications so that you don't miss anything. If you have any questions regarding this reel or any reel in particular, leave it in the comments section. I try to answer all of those questions that I receive. And that includes if you're stuck on a reel and you're looking for a way to get unstuck. Maybe you're missing a piece or a part, or you forgot how it comes back together. And finally, if you have a reel that needs servicing, well, I do that by mail, as I mentioned in my video. And if you're interested in that, please send a note to my email on the business card that follows, and I'll be happy to provide you with that information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.